we're kind of trapped in a world music, from a world music perspective. The cajon now is kind of trapped in its most obvious similarity of the drums. So a lot of people approach the cajon and they go boom, check, boom, boom, check. But then
it's a drum set.
It's a drum set. But then they get really bored because it's not really a drum set.
Right. All right. So we're here with Paolo, right?
Yeah.
Paolo at D.
G.
G. Do you want to pronounce it for me?
De Gregorio. This is De Gregorio. It's like maybe the Spanish or Italian version of McGregor, I suppose. It's like patronymic name. So.
Perfect. Well, we're here at his shop with him. He's going to tell us a little bit about what exactly these instruments are, the cajones, and where they came from.
Yeah. Well, the cajon is literally the box or drawer. It's an instrument that has its origin in Peru.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably the beginning of the century. We don't know exactly when, but there are chronicles about that. The presence of this instrument as far as the 1850 or 75, something like that. Anyway, it obviously was used by the black community, which was made of almost slave, because the slavery in Peru, I think, finished around that time, more or less, maybe a little earlier than that. So it was an instrument together with other ones like the quijada, which is the jawbone, the donkey jawbone, or the el checo, la cajita. They were like little small hand percussion, which was used for their own folk music, which is still very much alive, and it's a tradition that it's definitely worth checking out. There are great ambassadors for this music that are coming to play even in our venues like Susana Baca, Eva Illon. And so the origin of this instrument comes from there. In the last 20 years it had a massive spreading, a very fast development, mainly because it was imported in our part of the world, well, Europe mainly, and then the US via Europe by Paco de Lucia, who was unfortunately died recently, one of the greatest flamenco artists of all time, and also an innovative genius of this genre, which was introducing new sounds, was always on the lookout for interesting sounds that could improve flamenco or could at least make his musical idea come true. So he did experiment with various percussion instruments at the end of the 70s until they came across the cajon, and the legend says that even various interviews with Paco de Lucia say that he actually met the cajon at in Peru, in Lima, at an event held by the Spanish embassy there, who invited him and Chabuca Granda, who was a famous singer-songwriter at the time, and they saw, Paco de Lucia saw the instrument that night. Although it is true that he was already looking out for this kind of instrument, and probably he heard about it, but he wasn't so conscious about it until that very moment. So at the end of the 70s, that's when it entered the flamenco scene through Paco de Lucia. And he made a famous record, which is this one here, Solo Quiero Caminar. We have this framed because it's the beginning of, the musical beginning of this phenomenon of Spanish.
Yeah, and now it's one of the main instruments used in flamenco music. Is that right?
It's one of them. It's one of them. Definitely, it's not one of the main. There is still, has to be accepted completely in all kind of flamenco settings, because flamenco is almost sacred in certain places, and the focus, the center point is singing. So the singing is the pillar of flamenco. Guitar comes later, and so dance comes later, and percussion comes even later, and then, but it's there. So it's definitely a big result, because being so selective, this music, it's a big enough achievement to be there for for flamenco cajon. So that kind of proves a point that it is an instrument that can be very useful and find its own place inside the music. I think one of the qualities of the cajon is kind of sound which is discreet. It's not so overwhelming or so ringing, so resonating. It is a more subtle sound, and therefore
it works really well culturally.
Yeah,
yes.
It kind of
Different
suits.
types.
It's fantastic for acoustic guitar.
Yes.
Because acoustic guitar is the most common instrument in the world, but it's a very delicate one, and it has a very limited natural volume.
Right.
You know, so it is difficult to couple it with a percussion instrument that doesn't eat.
Yeah, that doesn't take away.
That doesn't overwhelm the guitar, and the cajon has succeeded in that. You know, that's a great beginning. You know, to enter other music and other styles of music, and I think that the first chapter is written, but there are many more that are waiting to be written. And I think that the next step would be to see what happens when it really enters the musical styles in their highest kind of elites. You know, when big artists will start discovering this instrument, the qualities of this instrument. I think it's been like a word of mouth spreading at the moment. I mean, Paco de Lucia did kind of symbolically open to that, but after that, most people who buy a cajon are not really aware of Paco de Lucia or his percussionists or how they play. So
they just say, "Oh, that looks like a simple instrument to learn."
Well, I can do something with it, which is true, and that's part of the greatness of the potential and the popularity of the cajon. The other part is the not so obvious one, which is the cultural one, and finding out the actual techniques. But more than techniques, also the kind of approach, the philosophy of the cajon. So the cajon is not like other percussion instruments, which are like flamboyant or obvious or excellent to solo with, or like really flashy. The cajon is a bit more discreet, and the way to play, I think the way you play, you interpret the cajon, you do stuff with the cajon, has to kind of go along that way. So I personally really like the way of flamenco, the flamenco style, because it's all about being within the music, within the weaves of the music, but not kind of supporting like a drummer, rock drummer would do. And this is probably one of the steps that we need, we're kind of trapped in a world music, from a world music perspective. The cajon now is kind of trapped in its most obvious similarity of the drums. So a lot of people approach the cajon and they go boom, chuck, boom, boom, chuck. But then
it's a drum set.
It's a drum set. But then they get really bored because it's not really a drum set.
Right.
It can kind of
very advanced playing these instruments.
But the beauty of the cajon is not about boom, check, boom, boom, check. It's about finding all the little sound and kind of weave this fabric of the texture. So building a kind of embroidery which goes underneath the music. So I think that part of cajon playing has still to be discovered by the great public.
I would agree.
And we're definitely trying to to help this succeeding and happening. And so this is my point of view about the cajon. I really like Peruvian cajon as well, which is another word, another philosophy as well, and another way of playing.
Yes.
But obviously,
we'll have to go there next.
Yeah, that's another journey. Fortunately, we have a couple of very good Peruvian percussionists living in Barcelona, so we had close contact with them. But the most of the work we did as cajon manufacturers is for the snare cajon with the kind of flamenco version of it,
Right.
because this is our main endorsers are using this, and this is what we do best, because we have this kind of feedback and this kind of cooperation with them, which gives us a lot of advice and a lot of tips.
Yeah.
I would say, how to where to go, what to look for, and how to improve our production. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of production, you do have a factory here in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us just, a quick overview of how it's made.
Yeah.
Maybe let's talk about this one, since this is
Yeah.
probably the one that people will see the most.
we do about 40 different models of cajons. Now we have two here, which the immediate look, it's like, well, it's a box, it's a wooden box, but they differ in sizes. As you can see, some are wider, some are deeper, and the material, most importantly, the front panel differs very much from one model to another, and the kind of wood that we use. This is one type of plywood, this is another type of plywood. They all have different sound features, characteristics of the sound. And another important part of the cajon is the internal snare system. You can see there are two things sticking out from the cajon here. These are basically snares that run across the front plate, and they have a tensioning,
Yes.
a tuning system over here.
So is it common to make these out of the plywood, or
Well,
or
there
they
are-
solid wood?
We also
Cajones.
have solid wood,
Okay.
basically, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
One's very
This
beautiful.
is made from mahogany, for instance.
Mahogany.
Right? Yeah, this is a type of mahogany, and a walnut, genuine walnut finish. If you see it from outside, it's again a box, but like this special cajon, it's carved so that all the inner joints are 45 degrees. There's no sharp angles, so there is some work inside the cajon as well that is not so obvious. This is, for instance, one of the snares that I was telling you about. You have to imagine that the snares in this case are electric guitar strings, or folk guitar. In this case it's a folk guitar string, and it's kind of, it's screwed up here,
Okay.
and there is another tension down there which pulls.
It gives it that rattling
you-
sound when you
Yeah,
hit it.
you can kind of decide how much rattling you want to have. The looser you have it, the more it will rattle, basically. So you have to find a way of tuning, so to speak. It's not
Yeah.
actually tuning to a definite pitch or not, but you're
How
it's
much
like-
rattle you want?
how much, just like a snare drum. In
Right.
fact, these instruments are mostly defined as idiophones, so like a bit like a maraca, which is a whole body that gives you the sound. But the way we build these cajons is more like thinking about a membranophone. It's like a drum, where this part is kind of detached, it's separate from its body, and it's thinner, and it has special qualities that this part doesn't have. So this is actually the part you play. So whereas an idiophone sounds the same wherever you hit it, but I think this is not an idiophone. This is a membranophone. I approach it this way anyway. So this is our point of view. We also have like electronic cajons. We have electroacoustic.
I didn't know those even exist.
Yeah, this is another kind of cajon that we make.
Wow.
That integrates some electronics, some pads, and there is a control panel at the back with an SD card that you can program and put all the sounds that you want to
That is
shoot.
so cool.
Yeah, so you have basically an acoustic instrument from this side, very responsive, like a very good acoustic cajon. But then you have these three pads that you can play, sort of like a cajon way, you know, with the bass in the middle and the sharp tones.
So that's essentially an electronic drum set on the side then.
Yeah,
You can program different sounds in there.
Yeah.
And then what are these tall kinds over here?
Well, these are prototypes. They're not actually part of our catalog, but these are like congas. Because there is another part of the cajon history, which is the third way, so to speak. Whereas Peruvian cajon and flamenco cajon are related historically, there are cajons in Cuba as well. There are cajons that they play rumba with, you know, yambu, traditional rumba. In fact, in a very similar way to the Peruvian, a lot of former slaves or you know, Afro-Cuban didn't have their original drums, and they kind of played on whatever they could, you know, put their hands on. And in this case, it was wooden crates and cajon. So there is a kind of rumba that they played in the by the dockyards, you know, on the docks, and that was the rumba yambu. And later, also in certain styles of more modern rumba, like guarapachangueo, there is a lot of these types of cajons. Actually, there are these types of cajons, which are also Cuban, which are using for improvisation, for quinto, and bass cajons, kind of more Cuban type of cajon, which is wider, it's got no snare, and it seems to make, you know, a bass sound to which these other instruments kind of solo on top, and they, you know, they have these intricate patterns between them. So basically these are sometimes, you know, we get requests from some Cuban Latin percussionists that need this kind of you know, the colors for their sound, and so this is the result. Basically, we have the tumba, quinto, and
cool. So they're resembling some congas.
yes, basically.
Just with a wooden top.
Also have a foldable cajon, which is you know, made for
that's
traveling.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, that's another. We actually made some videos as part of our kind of divulgation activity, which is uniting all different styles of cajon playing and dance, and we call this Cajon of the World. We made a video and then a concert after that, and we're still, you know, proposing this this show, and it reunited Cuban, Peruvian, flamenco cajon players, plus a selection of other styles like Arabic drumming. Well, not really Arabic, actually, it's Gnawa from Morocco, and so North African, and Brazilian, and also kind of hip hop rhythms all mixed together, and kind of, you know, doing a musical journey.
I love it. I want to watch it.
Yeah.
Is it already up?
It's on
your
YouTube. Yeah,
website?
It's on
I will link that
So-
in the description box as well.
Yeah, you can see those kind of instruments in action, used
Awesome.
all together with Peruvian cajon and flamenco cajon. Methods that we produced is like cajon power.
Like a method book to kind of teach yourself how to play.
It's a method book with a double DVD. With
I think
almost
I'll buy one from you.
great. This is about 4 hours worth of stuff, material, all kind of musical genres, recorded in studio with, you know, very good means, and so this is also another one that we made specifically for flamenco with Paquito Gonzalez, who is one of the busiest and most sought after flamenco percussionists in the scene, and where Vicente Amigo appears and Giovanni Hidalgo. So I think that part of our activity is probably one of the things that differentiates us from other cajon makers. You know, there are many cajon makers, and some of them really good. So I'm not boasting about how good we make the cajons, but we do kind of take pride in putting an extra effort towards that. And,
I like that.
And this is
Helping
what
people
is our our kind of signature to this activity, our personal, view on that.
Where can people go to find more about your company and about you?
Well, we have a web page, obviously, which is cajondg.com.
Okay.
Our Facebook page, we have our YouTube channel. We have many videos there, and
You got a lot of demonstration videos for each cajon, don't you?
yeah, also, yeah,
Okay,
but
so
you
someone-
also have,
You can try them out basically on the
yeah,
videos.
you can check them out there. We have short kind of commercial videos, which are meant to, to explain how that instrument sounds.
I hope you all know a little bit more about a cajon, what it is, and maybe if you want to play it, you know how to get in touch.
Yeah,
And I want to thank
definitely.
Paolo again for having us in his shop.
You're welcome. Thank you. So when you sit backwards, another advantage that you have is that you have this side that you can use. So